I would like to hand over to our first presenter, Hana Uusimaa, who is working for UNEP in the Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific in Bangkok. Hana has been with UNEP since January 2008. Before that, she was working in Nicaragua and South Africa, researching on tropical ecology, and Hana holds a master degree in biology. So the floor over to Hana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I will give an introduction to climate change adaptation. Before I go to climate change adaptations, I'll go through climate change in general and the impacts of climate change and different responses to climate change. And I will later answer the question, what is climate change adaptation? And what are the different adaptation options? And briefly tell you about UNEP's work in climate change adaptation. And I'll now start by going through the basic climate change science. Next, please. It is a fact that the Earth is warming. These figures show changes in temperature, sea level, and northern hemisphere snow cover. And this is from the International Panel on Climate Change fourth assessment report from last year. The average global air temperature near the Earth's surface increased by about 0.74 degrees Celsius over the past century, and 11 of the last 12 years rank among the 12 hottest years on record since 1850. And the second half of the 20th century was the warmest 50-year period in the last 1,300 years. Next, please. And most of the observed increase in globally average temperatures are very likely due to the observed increase in human-produced greenhouse gas concentrations. The climate model projections summarized by the IPCC indicate that average global surface temperature will likely rise further 1.1 to 6.4 degrees Celsius during the 21st century. And these range of values result from the use of differing scenarios on future greenhouse gas emissions. Next, please. Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but I'll quickly remind you of the greenhouse effect, which is behind the global warming. The greenhouse gases are the gases present in the Earth's atmosphere, and they reduce the loss of heat back to the space, and therefore they contribute to the global temperature. And actually, without greenhouse effect or greenhouse gases, there would be no life on Earth because the planet would be too cold. Next, please. However, human activity since the Industrial Revolution has increased the concentration of various greenhouse gases of carbon dioxide, methane, ozone, chlorofluorocarbons, and nitrous oxide, among others. Molecule for molecule, methane is a more effective greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but its concentration is much smaller. And aside from water vapor, which has a residence time of days, most greenhouse gases take many years to leave the atmosphere. Next, please. And the biggest factor of present concern is the increase in the CO2 levels. The 2005 level was highest over the last 650,000 years. And the same rise in the CO2 concentrations at the end of the ice ages took over 5,000 years, while an even bigger rise has happened only during our industrial age. Next, please. Fossil fuel burning has produced approximately 3/4 of the increase of CO2 from human activities over the past 20 years. And most of the rest is due to land use change, mainly deforestation in the tropics. And livestock enteric fermentation and manure management, paddy rice farming, land use and wetland changes and landfill emissions, among other factors, are leading to the higher methane atmospheric concentrations. And then agricultural activities, including the use of fertilizers, lead to higher nitrous oxide concentrations. Next, please. So we've seen that the warming of our planet is unequivocal and it's mainly caused by human activities. So we'll look now what are the impacts of these changes. Next. Next, please. The increasing global temperature is expected to cause broader changes, including glacial retreat, Arctic shrinkage, and worldwide sea level to rise, and an increase in the intensity of extreme weather events. And significant changes in the amount and pattern of precipitation, which may result in flooding and drought. And other expected effects of global warming include changes in agricultural yields, reduced summer stream flows, species extinctions, and increases in the ranges of disease vectors. Next, please. For the last century, glaciers have been unable to regenerate enough ice during the winters to make up for the ice lost during the summer months. And the retreat of glaciers affects the availability of fresh water for irrigation and domestic use, affects mountain recreation as well, and animals and plants that depend on glacier melt, and in the longer term, the level of the oceans. And in areas that are heavily dependent on water runoff from glaciers that melt during the warmer summer months, a reduction in runoff will affect the ability to irrigate crops and will reduce stream flows.